How's it going, guys, and welcome back to BL3's Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the SF Force. If you'd like to farm the SF Force for yourself, you're going to fast travel over to Skittermaw Basin over on Xylorgos, make your way over to this encampment towards the middle, where you will find a save station just at the bottom of the hill. Make your way up to the top of the mountain, you will find DJ Spinsmouth, who, once killed, can drop you the SF Force. The SF Force is a legendary Maliwan SMG, able to come in any of the elements, and although on the card it will always show one projectile, it can roll for 1 or 2 ammo cost per shot, which while the 2 ammo per shot will have a lower base damage on the card, it does actually output a higher damage. The SF Force fires out a continuous elemental laser beam, which alongside it will occasionally fire out musical notes that will deal elemental damage of both the rolled elements. These notes will also penetrate through targets. The SF Force did receive a single buff of 400% weapon damage, however this buff is a little bit bugged and only applies to the primary element. So while the SF Force does roll 2 elements, you always want to just stick with the main one. Now look, it is a Maliwan SMG that got a 400% weapon damage buff. You know where this is going. But before getting more into that, let's go over the differences between ×1 and ×2, where both are actually pretty damn good. ×1 will obviously consume a hell of a lot less ammo, but ×2 actually pumps out so much more damage that the extra ammo consumption doesn't even feel that harsh. Even without ammo regen, you were still killing enough enemies per mag that it really didn't feel that bad. That being said, a couple mag size bonuses will definitely go a long way with it, as with just the base mag you will be finding yourself reloading incredibly often. But really, between them, I wouldn't really say ×1 or ×2 is better over the other, it just kind of comes down to preference. If you've got ammo regen though, ×2 is probably going to come out on top. But this gun is just fucking insane. Again, it's a Maliwan SMG that got a 400% weapon damage buff. I'm sure it's really not that big of a surprise. And yes, while it does kinda suck that the damage buff only applies to the main element, you still get the effectiveness of both elements just because of how the unique effect of this works. So while you can't swap your main beam damage to another element, you're still getting incredibly good elemental damage coverage because you're still just doing both elements at the same time. On a gun that has incredibly high base damage, is a beam weapon so it's consistent damage, and is good enough to just carry you through pretty much any content in the game, including True Guardian Takedown, all the while having a 20% drop chance from a very easy enemy to farm. On top of that, it holds its own niche. This is easily the best Maliwan laser beam SMG, which, to be fair, there's not much competition. The only actual competitor in that race is the Ion laser, with the rest being the polyamorous Vibrapulse Egon, Emperor's Condiment, and I guess Kevin's Chili. That isn't to say this straight up beats out the Ion laser, because the Ion laser has an incredibly different playstyle where you melt down an enemy with the beam before executing them with a splash damage shotgun blast, where the SF Force is pure laser beam pleasure, letting you just beam down an enemy from start to finish. So if all those things are the case, then why the fuck is this thing forgotten? Well, simply put, there is a lot of Maliwan SMGs, and a huge percentage of them aren't just good, but quite literally meta-defining. A huge percentage of these guns have been the top gun in a meta at some point. And most of the time they only stopped being that once a stronger Maliwan SMG came around. Being in DLC 2, had the SF Force released in its current state, it probably would have had the same thing and there would still be a fan base around it to this day. But it released pretty weak, and I mean technically still half is if you swap to your secondary element, but because it didn't release at the same state as, let's say, the Flipper, it didn't get to have its little spotlight as an SSS tier gun. So when it did eventually get that buff, it was still just weaker than whatever was currently running the show. And that is kind of still the case to this day. As amazing as this gun is across all the characters, and while it does hold its own niche, on top of firing 2 elements at a time, there's just other Maliwan SMGs that are so much better than this thing. And that's nothing against it, that's just on Maliwan being busted. But that's about to it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all that. Right after this video goes up, I will be live right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there'll be a link to down in the description below, and just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.